Hello to the chicos, and especially a special shout out to the Mexican chicos and chicas today. We are celebrating Mexican chess as we are going to take a very good look-see at Jospem, aka Martinez Alcantara Jose Eduardo, doing what he does best, which is playing super cool chess, ladies and gentlemen. One of the main upsets of third round, I incorrectly called that round 2, I think, in my previous video, where Jospem won with the black pieces against Abdusattorov in game 1, and so in game 2, the Mexican GM only needed a draw with the white pieces to proceed to round 4, and what really inspired me to tackle this game rather than any other, including the F5 mayhem that I'm sure you have seen on many other channels that was played against Duda, was the way how Jospem went about playing with the white pieces and how he handled the situation that a draw was enough. And in a nutshell, the way how he did it was that he didn't play for a draw. Or I should perhaps rather say that he kept options open. So he had an open-minded fair fight rather than a let's trade everything and crawl my way into a draw. And that is the way to do it, folks. If you need a draw, you don't play for equality. You play for advantage. Because if you are equal, they'll not take your draw. If you're better, there's much higher likelihood they will take your draw. So this is what went down in game 2 between Jospem, also known as Martinez Alcantara, Jose Eduardo, and Abdusattorov. It was a Sicilian, and Jospem plays c3. I hope it's Jospem and not Jospem, by the way. I never heard it pronounced, but yeah, the Y stands for Jose, so Jospem? I really don't know. I apologize. Despite my dabbling, I know nothing of Spanish, but I would say Jospem. Anyway, so we're checking out some Alapin theory. Nothing untoward whatsoever. And Jospem plays with bishop d2 line, which is quite a clever deviation from the more trodden path being knight c3, which of course brings about some theoretical lines with take, queen c7, bishop d2, and d6. And then black puts their pieces in a similar fashion to what happened in the game. But the pawn structure is ever so slightly different, because black has got this c3 pawn to bear down on, and also sometimes the c4 square is accessible by a black knight on a rainy day. So it's slightly different, but what we are going to see in the game is only going to demonstrate the benefits of bishop d2 and no downsides. So for those of you who play the Alapin, I think this game could well be a very inspirational one to analyze and consider. So the idea, of course, is that we want knight c3, and after the trade we want to take back with the bishop. The point of this capture is that, once again, we don't have this backward c-pawn. Obviously, the bishop on c3 is awful, but it's not a permanent station, right? All I need to do is to play one more move, and I'm fine on the long diagonal. So, all in all, it looks quite healthy. Knight a6 played, very logical. The knight is now routed toward the d5 outpost. a3, that is to cut out knight b4. Knight c7, bishop d3, very good. Bishop e7, queen e2, beautiful harmonious development, and a little bit more space in the center. This is how you would play chess on an ordinary day. And needing only a draw clearly did not impact the way how Jospem decided to play out this game. In fact, if anything, he has demonstrated that he has been blessed with a lot of guts, for a want of a better word there, when uncorking h4, no less. Hello, friends. Let's put the Greek gift on the map, shall we? I mean, this is not how you play for a draw. This is how you play for, I want to take you out, buddy. Which is completely unnecessary given he's up 1-0. So this is all the more impressive. This guy is here to play chess, not to make a draw. Love it. Absolutely love it. h6 played. When the game was on, I was actually considering whether f6 would actually stop the great gift, because it usually doesn't when h4 is played, right? Because we have the standard take, check, and if the king goes back, we have queen h5. and then take, and all hell is breaking loose. But actually bishop takes g5 is playable here, which just prevents the pawn to advance to g6. And now in fact the game is ending on a perpetual check. The king can't go here because it hangs the bishop, and g6 allows mate, so that is not going to be good. Yeah, with the rook incoming. And so this is a perpetual check. Curiously, king g6 leads to another drawish position. After ef gf, check, f5, and queen g3. And now the king is very, very exposed on the g file. King h5 is the engine's favorite move, by the way. Hello. Let's play for draw. The more sensible one, of course, is take, or rather the more, I don't know, human, I suppose. And then after queen takes c7, a surprising twist in the queen g3 ideas, by the way, that we are eyeing with the unguarded c7 knight. This position, according to the machine, is as many zeros as you can put next to each other. Wow. Nonetheless, h4 is a superb move and a very gutsy one. h6 played, and we just carry on. Bishop d2, as I said, the bishop needs to be rerouted toward the king side. f5, this is to break all hopes of kingside attack. Takes, and rook h3. Still, my man is on a mission. He is like, mate, I'm gonna knock you out, buddy. It's rook g3, it's bishop takes h6, it's bishop back, queen up. It's still attack. You cannot possibly not admire the situation versus the playstyle. Like, it's just absolutely fantastic. It is really cool. It's like when the Brazilian football team in its element, they don't care if they are up 3-0 or 10-0. They still play most spectacular football available to them, and whatever their skills allow, and entertain the crowd. Brilliant. Bishop b1. The engine is a knob for adding a question mark, exclamation mark. It's an absolutely brilliant idea. Stock standard. Actually, let's not go with brilliant, but great. Queen d3, and we're coming in from here. Nothing untoward whatsoever. More accurate would have been the immediate rook g3, and there was an argument to be made that knight g5 may have been playable as well. I fully support bishop b1, no questions asked. Knight d5. Here, I think e5 may have been the right time to break the center when the white king is still lined up on the e file. As you will see, Jospem will soon move out of the way, disabling this tactic. And yeah, after knight d5, it's nothing but white. Queen d3, king f7, and this is the point where the most insane idea of the tournament, as far as I'm concerned, attacking idea of the tournament could have occurred. Totally unfindable, in my opinion, for a human brain. Absolutely unfindable. So the idea here that puts white way ahead is g4, which is super easy. Like 1500s would play this move, or the 2000s especially, right? g5, absolutely killing black. Except for one move, which I'm sure that Jospem saw, and that was the reason why he didn't engage with g4, which was rook h8. This kind of throws the spanner in the works, because now g5 takes a can't retake with the pawn because this guy is hanging, which was the whole point. So it's a very fun, awkward semi-pin that prevents the party from going forward. Right? Check is not really making a difference. King e7 and g5 takes is still the same story. I can't retake with the pawn because of rook h3. Solution to the problem? Knight g1. Now that is like, you look at your stockfish and you go like, bro, like, please don't do this to us. Like, what happened with everything that was once considered holy in this beautiful game of chess? Casually guarding the rook on h3 by the knight and the queen, and recreating the threat of g5, white is winning. Even after e5, note how that puts even more pressure toward h3, but knight g1 also allowed the double defense. So no worries. I think we can just take and queen g6 it now, and then now the rook will be able to swing to the d file and create new extremely obnoxious threats. Once again, shout out for the knight paving the way. Unreal. Absolute unreal stuff. So Jospem plays rook g3, which is the human move. And now comes Nodirbek's actually a crazy point when he just casually walks in the most open position, semi-open e-file, open c-file, weak backward pawn on e6, the whole shindig, and he just casually walks his king from g8 to b8. Like, how? This feels like a new game that I have never played before. Jospem steps out of the way. Of course, he wants to pressure the e6 pawn, and the king just continues his journey. And by the way, for educational purposes, here I'm going to highlight a theme that I want you to consider. When you see that rooks are activated via a rook lift, I always get the impression, by the way, that when GMs do it, it always works. When I do it, it always falls on its face. Anyway, that's not the educational bit. The educational bit is that the greatest downside to that setup is that your rooks are not even looking toward one another. And what that means is that when it comes to contesting an open file, we are always going to lose. And so Jospem immediately goes off of the file, not even waiting for rook c8. So remember how I told you that the king is en route to b8? And so you are like, oh, okay, that's cool, let's keep the rook here, cutting it off. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. Because if I sidestep with my king to secure it, rook c8. And that's it. I lose control of the c file. We are trading a pair of rooks, which I as white do not want, because black's king is more exposed. So I don't want trades. And hence, Jospem already foreseeing all of that, goes, yeah, nah, rook e1. And Nodirbek casually goes like, oh, well, okay. I guess I can find my way to home then. And ta-da! He just literally, you know, like daylight robbery style, casually walked from g8 to b8. In between move 20 and 30 on a full board. It's like, even when you do it in openings like the Old Indian or the King's Indian, where the whole center is closed, it's an impressive feat. In this position, unreal. Absolutely unreal. And now the position is completely level, by the way. The next thing that really stood out to me as a sign of brilliance was Jospem's rook maneuver, which is about to kick off. King a7. And here the Mexican plays rook g4. That's very creative. He actually wants to double up the rooks on the e-file and start turning up the heat on the very tender e6 pawn. Love me tender. Oopsies, jokes on you. 95. That was plan B. The bishop is jammed in. Now after the trade, black is clearly worse, as now we have got the bishop pair. The position has further opened up. The rook can swing across on the full rank. This bishop can become a powerhouse here. It is dangerous territory. So he dodges it, but now the knight gets rerouted to c4, hitting b6, blocking the c file, yada yada yada. Mistake number 2. Here, for some weird reason, Nodirbek took back with the bishop, allowing the sack and the pin. Whereas the more natural pawn takes wouldn't have allowed the sack on g5 in the same fashion, because then white can, black can pick off d4. And all of a sudden, black is ahead. Whereas if I take with the bishop, then we can take, and swing the rook either to f7, yeah, f7 actually, yeah. And now we are hitting rook here. Depending on where it goes, I will come out on the f6 or h4. And lo and behold, on the open fast, now it might be the white king that becomes a target of very filthy intentions. So yeah, bishop g5 was very unfortunate. And now we are in the finish line in the game after this trade. White is up a pawn, but the king is a little bit exposed. So Jospem goes on about neutralizing the bishop. Again, stuff the notation by the engine. Very human, very logical move. Cancel out the bishop. We play it every day of the week. No questions asked. Knight d2, great. And now we are essentially offering a draw for the first time in the game by attacking the pawn, and now Nodirbek goes back. And look, at this point, messy position, fair enough. And so now Nodirbek has to find a different move, rook h8, trying to create play on the h-file. But Jospem rises to the task and neutralizes the attack without too many dramas. And just when you would think that, okay, peace up, nothing to be afraid of, game is over, comes a really, really wicked threat from black. Check this out. Queen h6, obviously we saw that, mate is threatened, so f3 is forced. And now comes queen back to f6. And all of a sudden, black has got a plethora of threats around our king, if we are not careful enough. And it turns out that the knight on b7 is merely dead weight. We now have some very serious defensive duties to perform. For example, the most natural move here to defend the pawn on d4 is queen f2, loses by force, instantly. Queen g5, introducing check, and incredibly enough, there's no good way for white to deal with this. I tried to make queen c2 work, which will beautifully allow to demonstrate the winning idea for black. Queen g3, hitting the rook. I move the rook, rook h2, threatening mate. I defend the mate, and see ya, I just got checkmated. The classic motive, by the way, every club player should know this. That when your mate threat doesn't work with the queen in the front, a very good way to go about life is to try to swap the order of the pieces. So this is the right position to demonstrate the idea. If we go check and check, yes, it is winning, but it's messy, it's not mate. Right? And the king runs. Now knight d5 happens to win the queen here, because if I take it hangs, and if I go here it's check here. But this is not the clean way to play. So with queen going in first, it's not gonna be a mate. But if you go in with rook first and then queen back here to cover f2, then it's gonna be mate. So Jospem saw all of this, credit to him. Plays rook e3, queen d4, would have been the draw, by the way. Queen f4, and now perpetual check ends the chess game. King g3 loses to rook check, by the way. So king g1 back, check, and perpetual check. I can't block because queen is hanging. But Nodirbek can't go for this because it means elimination. So the poor thing after rook e3 had to do something outlandish, and now he just is simply down a piece for nothing. King f1 is a glorious move here to step out of the check, and of course it is promptly met by mate. So Nodirbek had to defend the mate, but this allowed Jospem to finish the game with a flourish. Knight f5, a beautiful interference sacrifice, disconnecting the rook from the knight, but also hitting the queen while defending the rook. Just marvelous cooperation amongst the pieces. And if we have 5, then we can just take f4 with a check, and that's game over. Nodirbek played queen e5, but after queen g7, white's extra piece is going to prevail and win the game, and thus the Mexican GM Jospem, aka Martinez Alcantara Eduardo, is through round 4. He's definitely one of the underdogs in that round 4 segment of the tournament, all the more reason for us to cheer for him. And I cannot help but think how satisfied and justified he must feel in his own skin now, after some of those dirty allegations thrown at him, that now he's excelling over the board in potentially what might turn out to be the tournament of his life. So I'm going to root for him with increased gusto and enthusiasm for that reason alone, but also because he's playing fabulous chess, and that is just as important. So yeah, shout out to the Mexican. I'm super excited to see how far he can go. And that's going to be my recap of the third round of the World Cup. And I'm super excited to be back with round 4 in the next video. For now, please don't forget to like, to sub, to comment down below. and see you in the next one. Bye.